This is my attempt of giving a brief history of the American colonization society and its relationship to Liberia. If I have time, I will touch on the war and how that started too. So in 1816, the American Colonization Society was formed. It was a coalition of slaveholders and then anti-slavery abolitionists who came together because they both had problems. And the problem was that the growing population of free Black communities in the U.S. So the slaveholders wanted to maintain the institution of slavery, and it wasn't good for them that there was the perception of free Black communities going on. So they wanted to reinforce any racial hierarchy there was, which was that the Black population was enslaved, and preserve any economic ties. So if the enslaved population couldn't see that they were free communities, they hoped that it would curb any attempts of them ever thinking that they would be free. The anti-slavery abolitionists wanted like a moral cleansing, I would describe it as. They wanted to kind of feel good about everything that was going on. They were kind of being like, oh, we're missionaries. This isn't like a Christian thing to do. So they came together and they decided that they were going to resettle the free Black communities in the U.S. back to Africa. So they landed on sending a settlement to the coast of Liberia, and they decided to put up their settlement in what is now known as present-day Liberia. And the thing is, there were already indigenous people living in that land, and it started a lot of conflict. And I would say it started a list of conflicts that just went on throughout the history of Liberia. So the Day people were the people who lived on the coast. And I'm going to read excerpts from the Columbia History Journal and some other scholarly reviews of what happened based on historical accounts. Okay, so it states that the indigenous African inhabitants of the Liberian territory were generally antagonistic to the establishment of the Liberian nation and played no role in the decision-making around its founding principles and documents. According to Liberian scholar and historian Jeremy Levitt, the Day people, which were the group that were living in the initial settlement territory right on the coast by where Monrovia is today, they were abhorrent to the settlers' presence. They forcefully resisted the erection of a colony, a settlement, a dominion in Cape Mazzarato, or any other location on the coast because they were already living there. He goes on to write that indeed the colonization society settlements and indigenous tribal communities were at war over territory and trade routes throughout much of the 19th century. And they kind of go on to talk about how after the settlers had then won against the Day people, a lot of the indigenous population started to retreat inward into the Midlands and the Highlands. And basically the American Colonization Society was kind of backed by the U.S., so they had a lot of resources for guns and were able to make armed forces. So they then started to annex and take control of, they call it the hinterland or the interior. So a lot of Liberians, when we talk about the interior, we're talking about inland, like Nimba and Limba County, Lofa, things along those lines. So that's where that comes from, the hinterlands or the interior. So they were able to kind of annex the interior or the hinterlands, which made up the bulk of the Liberian territory, and that's where the indigenous people had retrieved to. And this was because they had armed forces. So then the ACS now had primary control over the hinterland. However, this came with a cost because the ACS, or now the New Settlement Liberia, had taken out a lot of loans from the U.S. in order to establish them. So now they have a big economic problem in about the 1860s.